Good morning, Honourable Finance Minister, and indeed Her Majesty's Ambassador Melanie Robinson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming you and indeed our broader business community to the British Chamber of Business in Southern Africa. We're really excited to be partnering on actually our second event with you. The first one was an in-person event just over a year ago in better pre-COVID times, when we were able to host a series of with the Ambassador to South Africa from Zimbabwe, and indeed several leading Zimbabwean business people in Johannesburg. The world has changed a little bit since that last meeting, so here we are in our virtual forum. I will very quickly give a brief introduction of the morning and indeed what we're going to be discussing and the format. But really, it's my opportunity to speak to our new members and to welcome you to the British Chamber of Business in Southern Africa. Southern Africa really covering the SADC region, which we believe is the growth engine for Africa moving forward. And really the British Chamber, we serve really three purposes. The first is to work with the diplomatic missions, the ambassadors, the high commissions, the Department of Investment and Trade to really try and contribute to advocacy for creating a better business environment that allows our organizations to grow, encouraging bilateral trade flows from the region, from Zimbabwe to the UK and vice versa, but more broadly across the SADC region. But secondly, really our core function as a business community is to be the voice of business, to work very closely with our member organizations to ensure we are empowering you to grow your businesses, be it through helping you navigate complex legislation or the regulatory environment, particularly in this post-Brexit context, but even it's just a simple business problem. How do I grow my business? And we really want to partner with you on that. And thirdly, through events like this morning, to really inform our members, to give access to distinguished speakers like yourself, Minister, and indeed the Ambassador, and have this really opportunity to engage with you so we can learn and move things forward. I think it's important. We believe in sustainable capitalism, and we believe in working with purpose-driven organizations, really using business as a mechanism for growth and advancement on the Human Development Index. And really we're creating a powerful network and ecosystem where we can be trusted partners and work together with government, with business to enable growth and development in our countries, in our region, and indeed in our businesses. I'm going to stop talking and just really kind of share my delight at welcoming you, Minister Mthuli Ncube, and indeed Ambassador, Her Majesty's Ambassador Melanie Robinson, who's going to be driving the questions this morning. So perhaps, Ambassador, if I could hand over to you, and thank you again for making the time and joining us. And Minister, I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Leon, for that introduction. And I'm delighted that we are joined by Honourable Professor Mthuli Ncube today, as we mark such an important moment for UK business advocacy here in Zimbabwe. UK business plays an active role in Zimbabwe, and I'm really excited that today we have a really good mix of incumbent businesses. And I remind the Minister that British businesses have the highest stock of investment of any country in Zimbabwe, $1.9 billion. And we have an exciting mix of those incumbent businesses and some potential investors on the call. And I really do hope, as Leon said, that through BritCham we can build a strong voice and strong community for UK-linked businesses and investors. Just in terms of housekeeping, I will be putting questions to you, Honourable Minister. I'll give you 5 questions to begin with, and then we will be getting questions from the businesses. Please do put them in the chat, and we will endeavour to get to as many as possible. My colleague is going to be, from BritCham, is going to be choosing questions and putting them forward as we go. So, Honourable, I'm going to ask you some tricky questions, but I'll ask you for relatively short answers so we really can get to the questions from the businesses, if that's okay. Would you like to say anything now, or shall I just launch in, Honourable?
Oh, let's just to say, look, I'm delighted to be participating, in this discussion. We really want to do more of this. I think it was long overdue, if you think about it, but I think last year was we had to write that off. The whole world had to write it off last year because of COVID, but I think we're slowly all getting out of that. In fact, by the way, I just got vaccinated 30 minutes ago. So that shows that there is some progress in dealing with the pandemic. So over to you, please proceed.
Good news, working on the front line of politics and delivery. Great, well, my first question is quite a broad one. Could you please give us an update on the Zimbabwean economy for 2021?
Well, 2021 really promises to be a good year on the economic front. It's a year of recovery. We've had 2 tough years. 2019 growth, a negative easily 6%, if not more. We're just finalizing the figures now. We couldn't finalize them because of COVID, but now we will. And then 2020, slightly better, but still in negative territory for, about minus 4.1%. But this year we expect a recovery, certainly upwards of 5%. In fact, our government prognosis is more like 7.4%. But our view is that, you know what, any growth above 5%, we'll be happy with it. It's just recovery. What's driving it is a few factors. One is just general macroeconomic stability. After 2 years of battling with the macroeconomic environment, we have finally got the stability that we've been yearning for. So the currency is relatively stable after the introduction of the auction system. And that is really due to several factors. One is just a prudent and tight fiscal policy management, and also prudent monetary policy management, especially in the last few months. And then also a strong current account position. It's been in surplus for the last couple of years. So all that has really contributed. Plus the auction design itself contributed to stability on the currency front. Now, looking at the performance of the sectors, the sector that will recover the most is obviously agriculture, because it was hit hard by the drought over the last few years, and then the cyclone effect. So we had a tough time. And so we expect a recovery easily of the order of 20% from that sector. Just looking at in terms of output for the various crops, the key ones, where they're looking at wheat, maize, and so forth, things are really looking up. Then the availability of water naturally will power our hydropower availability, which is very good. So power outages would diminish this year. And then speaking to the companies, some of them are online here because they operate in Zimbabwe. We're seeing very decent figures in terms of increases in capacity utilization. That this year there's an expectation that capacity utilization levels will be as high as 60% for some sectors. And this is really pleasing. If that really pans out, it will be the highest levels of capacity utilization probably in the last 15 years. And that's real recovery. So it's quite pleasing. So really everything looks very good. And I think what we need to bed down this year as well is to drive our agenda for improving the environment for doing business. So we're working on that. One thing that I had to do in the budget for 2021 when I announced it was to scrap this requirement for indigenous shareholding in platinum and diamonds. It's gone. If you're in the mining sector, you have freedom to own 100%. I know it did cause some confusion, the way we had said it in the budget, so I had to issue an extra statement, but I can assure you there's no requirement whatsoever for you to have any other shareholder other than yourself as a foreign investor in any of the sectors in Zimbabwe. So, but we have to keep working at the environment for doing business around currency convertibility, just reducing the country risk, making it easy to get licenses. We just have to keep going. For companies, especially in the mining sector that are export oriented, we have created the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. You are free to list on that exchange. It's a US dollar exchange. In fact, I'll be announcing in the next couple of months a full bouquet of rules around a full offshore financial center, similar to Mauritius, Isle of Man. Hope we can catch up with Isle of Man. I'm fully aware of the issues around tax havens and so forth. We're fully aware, but we still feel it's a worthy project in a small country like Zimbabwe in the middle of Africa to have that kind of environment, just to promote foreign direct investment and raise a capital. So this is, we expect a very good 2021, frankly. Thank you, Ambassador Robinson.
Thank you, Honourable. And you've started to anticipate my next question, which is that you've often said you'd like to attract more foreign direct investment to Zimbabwe. So what would you say to those investors who still feel a bit reticent? What are you doing that you think will attract more FDI, particularly from places like the UK?
Let me start with the incentives we've put in place and why those incentives have not been enough. We are fully aware. In fact, yesterday we had a long discussion in terms of investment in the renewable energy sector. We can give investors what you call national project status, which means that they don't have to pay the investment or equipment, whatever they bring in. It doesn't have to be subject to any duty. We will waive a lot of things. And any equipment they bring in will be duty free. We can also, if you're looking for domestic investors into your business, we can give the project what we call prescribed asset status, which will then cause pension funds to invest in your business. And then if you are an export-oriented company, the corporate tax rate is also lowered. For example, if you are exporting up to 40% of your turnover, the corporate tax rate is basically about 20%. So it drops from 25 to 20%. If you are exporting up to 50%, then it drops to 17.5%. And above 50% in terms of your turnover, it drops to 15%. And if you're in the BOT sector, this speaks to renewable sector investors, for example, the corporate tax over the first 5 years is 0%. There's no corporate tax for the first 5 years. And then the subsequent 5 years after that, after year 10, then it rises to 15%, and then it is the full 24% after that period. So again, we are able to enjoy a flexible tax environment in that regard. There's a list, obviously, of products, I must say, or rather activities that are duty exempt or for which you get a duty rebate as an investor. I could spend a lot of time on that in the mining, agricultural sector. In fact, all the sectors, really, I could share a document with you on that. So we have got that in place, but we still know that it is not enough. We have a slew of incentives, they're not enough. What will cause investors to really start pouring money is they need to feel secure about property rights, in the mining sector being a case in point, in agriculture. So for the mining sector, as I've said, that we've completely dealt or removed the requirements around the indigenization rule. It's gone. You can own 100% of your investment. We are working on the mining cadastral system to define geographically proper rights more precisely, because that has not worked so well in the past. We have not really gotten our heads around it, but we think now the system we're putting in place will work well. And then in the agricultural sector, you again seen us make strides towards recognizing property rights, first of all, by our desire to want to compensate farmers for improvements. And for those who are foreign investors under the BIPAs, the bilateral agreements between countries and PITs, our idea there is to restore a title or to institute compensation through the restoration of title, which would then own up to the property rights mantra. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we go beyond the other incentives to make sure that investors are attracted. On the currency front, as I said, the macroeconomic stability, which was a major factor. We've dealt with that. We've shown that we can stabilize the currency. And through the auction system, investors can then be able to take out their dividends through the auction system. They are doing that already. They've started. There's some progress. And we're determined to keep the auction system going. So issues around currency convertibility are slowly being resolved. And for long-term investors, you can be sure that those will cease to be an issue. So we are doing everything we can to really improve the environment for doing business. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable. And it was good to hear you hit some of the points we often hear from British business, which are, as you say, about currency convertibility, land tenure, and something that goes with that, rule of law. So you hit many of those. I'm sure others will come back in with other questions where they've got other issues where they are reticent. But let me turn now to exports. And Zimbabwe and UK have been trading on a UK-Zimbabwe economic partnership agreement terms since January the 1st this year. And this allows for tariff-free and quota-free exports of Zimbabwean products to the UK, which makes it a very easy, smooth, profitable market. Can you please talk about the National Development Strategy and how you plan to drive export-led growth? Thanks.
Thank you very much for making reference to the National Development Strategy, which is really is our economic blueprint that's going to drive our development agenda and growth agenda over the next 5 years. And within that, the export growth agenda is key because if you cannot compete globally through exports, then your industry or whatever economy is not competitive, really. So that's how you show and demonstrate competitiveness and drive competitiveness. So we're looking at various sectors. First of all, I would say the first order of business is some form of beneficiation. then it allows us to then convert those primary products, be they in agriculture or in the mining sector, into secondary and value-added products for which then one can compete globally. But I must say that for the UK specifically, as a target market, Zimbabwe has always had a record of exporting agricultural commodities into the UK without beneficiation. Beneficiation is other markets. So you recall a time when we used to, get into Marks and Spencer's, any part of the UK, and you find Monge 2 from Zimbabwe and some Brussels sprouts from Zimbabwe. That was a long time ago. Frankly, we would like that era to come back. We want to be able to again export our agricultural products into the UK. I would say that's one industry where really there are quick wins in terms of the relationship. The flower industry as well. We Zimbabweans need to do a lot more investment in the horticulture flower industry sector to get it back to where it was, so that again we can export those fresh roses to the UK. So I would say really driving exports around the agricultural sector, both in terms of food as well as horticulture, as I've mentioned, cashew nuts, flowers, whatever, is critically important. We will be driving that. We're acutely aware that also there are rules around who can export to the UK. Are these products from farms that are, there's still controversial ownership around them? We're aware of that. And those are things that we need to kind of just clean up and make sure that we can make that relationship work. So really, I would say agriculture is the most important. Of course, minerals, our minerals go everywhere, so it's UK, it's China, wherever they're needed, they are really, they go everywhere. But also the other way, which is really Zimbabwe, importing from the UK. That also is another opportunity as we grow this trade agenda, that we need to look for opportunities where Zimbabwe can start importing more from the UK. But I must admit that Asia is very competitive, as we all know. They're competitive everywhere, especially China. So in terms of imports, they compete very hard on price. But we are aware that UK also has some very competitive products, which we should try to take advantage of. You know what? Then something else, which is it's not quite an export, but well, I guess an export of skills. That Ambassador Robinson, I've always had the idea that maybe we could be more systematic in the way we manage the remittances from Zimbabweans in the UK. They are an export to the UK. We exported skills in the nursing sector, maybe some teachers and others. Maybe there's a way in which that could be systematized into a program that is agreed between the two countries and not haphazard. But we are very happy with the remittances from the Zimbabweans in the UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good to hear you there talking about some of Zimbabwe's great exports that British people love to eat Zimbabwean mange too, and blueberries and other products, as you say. And so we've been very pleased to be able to help encouraging that and do the work we do with you on remittances already. So thank you for that response. I'm going to come to monetary policy now, and you touched upon this when you talked about why you think we've got a bit more stability as we go into the next year, and it being an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle for FDI, for attracting FDI. So you've just appointed, or there's just been a new monetary policy committee recently announced. So I'd love to hear a bit more on what you hope to see with regards to monetary policy over the coming year, recognizing that's the governor's responsibility, but it would be good to hear your views on that. Where you see the auction going, we have seen the rates starting to diverge. How are you thinking about the future of the auction over the coming year or so, and what you see of the future of the Zim dollar in 2021? Thank you.
Thank you very much. They say in monetary policy, never try to target the exchange rate. That's how you quickly grow gray hairs, or you lose your hair if you haven't lost it already. It's a tough thing to do. It's better to target inflation and monetary balances, but not the exchange rate. But Zimbabwe is pretty unique in terms of its reform agenda. We have, to some extent, tried to target the exchange rate, but by way of exchange rate stability. So we have that extra leg in the monetary policy, not just price stability, but also exchange rate stability, because that's what has given us the good environment that we're currently experiencing. So our objective, Ambassador Robinson, is really to maintain the stability of the Zimbabwe dollar. Yes, it could fluctuate within a range, but our desire as authorities really is to see it stable. So we're doing everything we can through all our monetary policy tools and fiscal tools to keep the exchange rate stable and to keep the auction system going, because that's what has given us the stability. So on that, what measures are we putting in place? So on the fiscal front, we are going to maintain fiscal discipline. In fact, for our numbers for 2020 show that in the budget, primary budget was balanced. And I do not intend in 2021 again to run any budget deficit in terms of the primary deficit. Again, I want to run a balanced budget. So we would not want the fiscus to add to money, to growth in money supply, especially reserve money growth supply. It should not be the reason why money supply is growing. So we take that off the table. Then on the core monetary sector itself, Governor has been more precise, especially over the last few months, in terms of the targeting of reserve money M0, because that's what we are targeting. We're not yet ready to target inflation, but also in targeting the whole issue of exchange rate stability. So better targeting of broad money and exchange rate stability as an objective. In terms then of the sustainability of the auction system, which we really want to sustain, is it sustainable? We have done that analysis. The answer is yes, in the sense that we have resources coming from exports, with US dollars coming from exports. We have US dollars coming from the 20% conversion in terms of domestic transactions from the use of the US dollar locally. And then third, Treasury every week sells between 5 to 10 million into the auction. And it's part of our strategy, because we, as a Treasury, also need Zimbabwe dollars to pay civil servants and so forth. So the US dollars that we earn from various taxes and so forth, customs or the receipts, we need to be converted. So the best way then is to channel everything through the auction so that we can support the auction system. So it's averaging about between 30 and 35 million US dollars a week in terms of the auction. We can sustain that quite comfortably. Now, you mentioned the issue of the Monetary Policy Committee. That's a very important institutional mechanism around the whole monetary policy issue. So we appointed additional members. Some of the old members will carry on, some of them will not, because they've moved on. And I know one of the members, for example, got appointed as a chairman of a large financial institution. And often once that happens, then you can't stay on the Monetary Policy Committee. One of the members got appointed to, without mentioning names, to one of a large government agency. So we also felt that maybe it wasn't appropriate that they remain on the committee, if they offered to step down themselves. So we've appointed new people, and it's people that we think they are sufficiently independent, very competent, we think. And some of the older members actually proposed these names. So they proposed, say, look, why don't you look at so and so or that person? We think that they'll be able to do a good job. But their remit is clear. Of course, they are independent. Is that we really want to want currency stability, want to target a growth in money supply, and all of that will contribute to the fall in inflation. So this year, by December, we expect inflation to actually, we're so bullish, Ambassador Robinson, that we think inflation might be about 10% year on year, but we are really bullish. I really want to give you the upside here. And I'm mentioning the figure because the governor has already mentioned it in the monetary policy statement. Although when I make most of the statements, Minister of Finance, I talk about the average inflation for the year of about 135%, but really the year on year in December, inflation should be very low, and we want to keep it like that. We can get there. We can do this. We can get there. So that's really our monetary policy stance, that we believe we'll be able to achieve a lot this year. We have our colleagues from the IMF coming through at some point in another 2 months, and we're discussing an Article 4 report. We hope they'll agree with us in terms of our analysis, in terms of where things are headed. And we hope that maybe sometime last year, then we can, agree on a staff monitored program or some version of it. Or, we'll see how it goes. It will be a good idea. Thank you.
Well, you won't be surprised, Minister, to hear that I have some follow-up questions on some of those answers, but I'm going to leave that for businesses to probe you, and I'll only jump in if I feel some areas are left unprobed. So let me come to my last question. We talked before about horticulture. That's a real area of emphasis for the British Embassy in supporting those who are wanting to export from Zimbabwe to the UK, and we're proud to be supporting that and look out for future webinars on that. But now I want to talk about renewable energy, another real focus for the British Embassy. And this year in particular, we are going to be hosting the 26th Conference of Parties on climate change in November in the UK. This is an incredibly important opportunity for the world to come together and finally try to agree a deal which will keep climate change to reasonable levels. And in this year, we're putting real emphasis on renewable energy. Now, Zimbabwe has huge potential in terms of renewable energy, third highest irradiation in the world, second highest level of damming in Africa. What are you doing to encourage renewable investment here in Zimbabwe this year? Thank you.
Thank you once again, Ambassador Robinson. First of all, let me congratulate the UK for hosting the Global Climate Conference. Is this COP? I don't know what COP number this is, but
COP 26.
Is it 26? Yeah, 26. Yeah. 26 indeed. And I'm sure Zimbabwe will be participating through the relevant minister. Let me congratulate you for that. On renewable energy, this is topical. We had a long discussion in the last few days on this issue, and my ministry is deeply involved in it as Treasury, but obviously with the Minister of Energy and the Central Bank. As I said right at the beginning, that we have so many incentives already, Ambassador, be they natural project status, and for solar energy, for example, we even have a duty-free importation of solar batteries and so forth, solar panels. So a lot has been provided in the form of tax incentives and all that. But then we notice that the investment is not coming through fast enough. The question is why? We have analyzed this. What we've realized is that we don't really have a clear view of our tariff structure. Tariff structure for renewable energy is critical. You know what happened in Spain, to an extent Rwanda and South Africa, Morocco and so forth. They were clear on the tariff structure, and that became the silver bullet in attracting foreign direct investment. So we should just say, you know what, as far as renewable energy is concerned, solar, if that's what we're talking about, the tariff is X cents per kilowatt hour. That's it. But to arrive that figure, we need to do our research and analysis. It should be an economic tariff. It should be an economic tariff. So the tariff structure is key. The next thing is, as I said earlier, is currency convertibility, that they can take their dividends out, and that they can also protect the investments as investors from currency volatility. So the ability to hedge currency risk is critical for investors. We are quickly aware. I was hoping I would talk to some of the development partners to work with us. I'll give an example, Ambassador and others. When I was at the African Development Bank, we worked on a project in Uganda, where it was it Norfund? I might get this wrong. I think it was either it was Norfund or KFW, one of them. But I need to go back into my notes. But what happened is like this: they provided using development partner funds, aid, literally official. They provided a guarantee or protection or hedge on exchange rate reach for a power project in Uganda. So what it did then, it created an opportunity where we as a bank were obviously supporting the project, but the development partner was coming in to provide the hedge for currency risk, and it worked. So you had this wonderful now arrangement where a development partner in the private sector and a development financial institution working together to develop a project along commercial lines. So again, if there's a way to talk to development partners, say, look, to what extent can you take on Zimbabwe exchange rate risk? I mean, of course, they have to want to do that, but we need to try that. as one thing. But we as authorities have to do our work, which is keep the exchange rate stable, make sure that there is a convertibility. We have to deliver that. I know that some investors in the sector would like to have the tariff quoted in US dollars only. But it's not necessary if we can ensure currency stability, and that even if currency is unstable, the tariff can be converted, it can be benchmarked in terms of US dollars. So it moves up and down with the exchange rate, and that you can take out your dividends whenever you wish to. So what we're doing then, we're working on a standard framework, to conclude, standard framework for power purchase agreements. In addition to that, what's happening is that obviously there are credit challenges regarding the off-taker being our power utilities. We're aware of that. And we're aware that to make things work, we as government probably have to offer a guarantee on a typical PPA, power purchase agreement. And we've accepted that. The next thing then is just to build that into some kind of standard PPA, power purchase agreement. And then this is what would avail to any investor in the renewable sector. Say, look, this is our typical PPA, this is your tariff, this is how we ensure currency convertibility. If we end up agreeing that is in US dollars, it is so much, and we'll provide a guarantee in terms of the off-taker risk from our ZESA, the power utility. We would do that. Then we have another agreement to say government also commits to the following incentives to support your investment. We'll give you national project status, you don't have to pay duty for this and that, you don't have to pay taxes for this and that, and give a whole package in terms of government support. We're working on that. We think that in the next 2 months we'll have concluded. So between Minister of Finance, Reserve Bank in terms of exchange control, Minister of Energy, we are seized with that. It is an urgent issue. So we hope to publish the results of that and talk to investors more. Something else. Yes, this is very important, Ambassador, which is that we think that we should now make more use of an auction system rather than waiting for investors to express. To say, look, we've got a site somewhere in the northeast of Zimbabwe. This is the site. The land is secure. You're within 30 kilometers of the national grid. We're inviting investors to invest in the project. Make your bids. This is a typical PPA, a typical government support document, which is how other countries have also done it. We think that that's also a way to go. We've endorsed that approach in addition with the normal unsolicited bid approach.
That's fantastic to hear, Honourable. And you'll be pleased to know that as the UK government, we've done a study into the barriers to renewable investment with UK companies and others. And so we'd be very happy to share with you some of the reasons why some of the duty-free imports and other mechanisms aren't quite working as you would like them to. And we'd love to come and brief you on that so you can help unlock some of that. But I'm delighted to hear that we will do that. But I'm delighted to hear that you're only 2 months away from a power purchase agreement. It's something we've been supporting the Africa Development Bank to give you advice on as how you develop a PPA that will really work for IPPs. And I'm really delighted to hear you say auction. I have to say, when I heard you talk about setting tariffs, I, in my mind, was thinking, must talk to the minister about the auction approach. Certainly when I was at the World Bank, Zambia next door used that approach, and even a few years ago managed to get 7 cents per kilowatt hour for their solar through the auction. And that was a few years ago. So I won't press you now, but I do have questions about how you make sure that the path you choose is renewable rather than fossil fuel, and how you move away from coal investments, because if you're going to be consistent with your commitments as Zimbabwe to reduce your emissions or keep emissions down, that will be necessary. But I will pursue that if people are short of questions, which I'm sure they won't be. So that's the end of my initial 5, Honourable. I'm going to ask Cecilia to read out one of the questions from the businesses so that you can start to take questions direct from UK business. Cecilia, please, the first question.
Hi, yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your energetic and enlightening bit of information that you gave through to us, Professor Ncube. I've got quite a few interesting questions. I've tried to accumulate sort of themes that we've got going, but I want to stay on the last topic that you addressed, which is around the auction system. And particularly, I think we've had a lot of questions around agriculture, and particularly what does the government of Zimbabwe see private sector's role in agriculture? Are they to be drivers of the sector or merely invitees? And then just another thing that I want to lock onto that on the auction system, we did have a question from Victor Gapare, who was asking, why is it necessary to have surrender requirements if the auction system is working well? So I think I'll just pause with those two and hand over to you.
Thank you, Cecilia. So Minister, a question on agriculture, drivers or invitees, and on the auction and surrenders. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good questions indeed. Let me start with the agriculture one. Would the private sector take a lead or just be invitees? It's a bit of both. I think also one thing we need to do perhaps is just recognize that as far as agriculture is concerned, Zimbabwe in a sense is still going through a transition in terms of attracting foreign investors into the sector. First of all, maybe you may not know this, that we've actually changed the funding model, where it used to be literally government financing agriculture directly, and slowly the private sector has become a partner. So I would say just on the financing front, we're beginning to open up the private sector, but we need more banks to participate. So you see us over time handing over the financing completely to the banking sector. In fact, we've already done that. So if you look at the agricultural sector budget, you don't see much of direct financing compared to the previously of agriculture through what we call the Command Agriculture Program. So private sector getting involved in financing is one area. Then in terms of actual production, indeed the private sector can make an offer to till pieces of land wherever, frankly, for whatever a crop. Nothing stops you from making that inquiry and for offering to invest in a specific area. The government can only say no, but nothing stops you from making that inquiry. And some private companies and individuals are doing that. As I say, we're still going through a transition. It's not like there's an avalanche of people wanting to invest. No, it's going through that transition. Now you use the word invitee. There's also a government idea about inviting investors, where we would have opened up pieces of land. We're looking of areas if you know Zimbabwe at all, I would call it what you call Mashonaland Central, close to the Zambezi River, up in the north of the country from here, where there's large tracts of land, but also it's not as densely populated, frankly. But also it's a poor area. Also, we see this as part of local area development, where we would open up tracts of land and then invite investors to invest in that area and grow whatever they want to grow. The water would come from the Zambezi River, which is quite close. That's one area. There are other areas in the Matabeleland North, sort of northwest of the country, in the Binga area. Again, a very poor area. Water is very close from the Zambezi River. Again, we would like to open up a space there. And then the other areas in the Lawveld, in the southeast part of the country as well, but also close to the Limpopo River, close to South Africa, there are other areas. So that's why we would kind of invite investors where government has opened up tracts of land, and investors would then partner with the government. But nothing stops an investor right now to approach, Zimbabweans who even own the land and partner with, or indeed to seek their own land to do investment in the sector. Now, coming to the auction system, why the surrender requirements? Again, you know what, Zimbabwe's foreign exchange market reform program has been a process. Initially, the surrender process really was our core anchor strategy in terms of supplying the auction. It has since evolved and broadened, but it is still necessary. It is still necessary. And remember that now we've made it even better for investors and said, look, if you give up 40%, let's say in the gold sector, to the government to convert into the Zimbabwe dollars, we'll give you Zimbabwe dollars at the going auction rate. But the 60% that you keep in hard currency, keep it forever. We're saying, so that's the incentive for giving us the 40%, which we then use to support the auction and support currency stability, that you get to keep your currency forever. It doesn't happen in other countries, by the way. Countries will say, hey, as they say, try Switzerland. You know, if you earn anything in terms of exports in Switzerland, you have to convert immediately. And in most countries, that's what happens. So we're allowing you to keep it forever, and we think that's an incentive. But it's all for a good cause, for good economic policy, which is really to keep our currency stable and to supply the country with much needed foreign currency. If you speak to operators within Zimbabwe, they'll tell you that because we're able to give them the foreign currency they need through the auction, they can better plan. That's why you find the capacity utilization is up to 60%, hopefully this year. All that is producing an environment of certainty. So it's all for a good cause. And I think that let's work with it for now.
Thank you, Honourable. Yeah, I think you hit 2 points very important to British business. Let me ask you, Cecilia, for a couple more.
Yeah, I'm just going to stay on the topic of products specifically. You mentioned, Professor Ncube, so earlier that you're seeing some really good quality coming out of Britain. We did have a question also coming up asking if extra duties were going to be added to products made in the UK but distributed via South Africa.
Let me understand this. So the goods would reach South Africa first, am I right? And then come into Zimbabwe, or Zimbabwe first, then into South Africa. Is it? Look, in terms of the agreement between the UK and Zimbabwe, I think routing the products via South Africa will then complicate things. Then they start, in terms of, what do you call it, regional trade, they will then start to count as South Africa products. I think that's something that we just need to manage. But also, why would the products go via South Africa first? Is there additional, is value addition, or is it just maybe a logistics issue that it's better if they land in South Africa? But if they are destined for Zimbabwe, then they wouldn't be redesignated as South Africa products. They're just en route to Zimbabwe. So I think there may be some nuances that we need to work on there, because it could attract extra duty for sure. I think one thing to do is to show that perhaps these products were en route to Zimbabwe. South Africa was just a conduit because of logistical arrangements. If there's no proper, cargo flight from London to Harare and is via Johannesburg, that's what it is. So we need to work at that. But I think that those are mechanics that between Zimtrade and our customs department, which by the way is under myself, we can work out those details to make sure that there's no prejudice for anyone wanting to export to Zimbabwe, but via South Africa for logistical reasons and not value addition reasons.
Thank you. That's
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable. And on that, if there are businesses that are struggling with that, there's a good offer there from the Minister to work with Zimtrade and Customs. So either via Britcham or the British Embassy or direct to the Minister. I think that's an offer from him to help you if the rules of origin is not clear. So thank you for that, Honourable. Just before I come to you, Cecilia, again, can I just ask people, remind you, please post your messages into the chat. That's what Cecilia's using to draw from. So please do, when you've got a question, make sure you're putting it in there. Sorry, back to you, Cecilia.
Thanks, Ambassador Robinson. The next one I'm going to get to is the big elephant in the room that we're also sitting with, the impact of the pandemic. Really 2 aspects that have come forward here. One, there seems to be, from public opinion, a difference in what is communicated by government on the impact versus what the people have felt on the ground. So if you don't mind commenting on that a bit, and also people want to know what is Zimbabwe's vaccination plan and the progress of that, since a lot of the economic recovery hinges on that at the moment.
No, I must say that I'm a little surprised that perhaps there's a feeling that there is a difference in the message in terms of what the public is feeling and the government. I think a lot of it really the differences will be around the resources that government is able to deploy to support citizens who have been impacted. But I didn't think that perhaps was a difference of opinion. Maybe I'm missing something, because we all admit that this is really the ultimate force majeure. I tell you, for any government, is ultimate force majeure. It has impacted lives and livelihoods. Lives in the sense of you just lose your life. We lost 4 ministers within government in a very short period of time. It's been devastating. We've all been through the ups and downs with the disease, and we've lost people. But we have tried very hard to move swiftly in terms of the lockdown, like we had to do in January. That was really timely. We had to do it. And when you watch the epi curve, it has dropped from, if you look at the case rate in terms of deaths, it was more like 4.1% at some point, if not 5. It has now dropped to about 1.2% or so, sharply. If you look at the epi curve, that's what it is showing. And that RI has also dropped quite sharply towards the level of 1, if not slightly below. So the lockdown has worked. But unfortunately, it has hit the citizens on the economic front. I mean, in a sense, there are times when you have to choose. Do you want to try to stay alive, or do you want to eat 1 meal a day as opposed to 3 meals a day? So and that's really the choice that governments will take, the choice that it's better to stay alive on 1 meal a day rather than to lose your life because you're trying to have all your 3 meals a day by continuing to work. So you find that in our approach this time around, we were quite flexible on formal business. They continue to operate, albeit within a curfew, but they continue to operate. We thought that was important. We were still strict on the tourism sector and the restaurant sector. It has been hit hard. Frankly, I would want our support for the tourism sector to continue. I continue to tell my staff to be very sympathetic to the tourism sector. Whenever they want guarantees to get bank loans, we are supporting that. But of course, we were more strict on the informal sector, which is where ordinary people operate from. We're not allowing them to operate during the lockdown, but we have since lifted the lockdown. So we are aware that we're impacting different sectors differently. But also it's because it's not easy to manage citizens as they go about their informal business. That's where the transmission really happens. It's a lot of people mixing and mingling freely. You just have to restrict their movements. And we're aware that may not have gone down in some sectors, in some quarters of citizens that way. But I think that we as government recognize the impact of the pandemic as much as citizens do, that it is hitting us hard on both the livelihood front as well as the lives preservation front. So our strategy then is to really try to fast track the issue of the vaccine while still maintaining the protocols around dealing with COVID, social distancing, masks, and so forth and so forth. So on the vaccine, of course, we take advice. You can imagine being Minister of Finance, being a non-doctor, we take advice from the Minister of Health. They lead the process of deciding which vaccine is best from the analysis that they've done, from interacting with their colleagues in the profession. And at the moment, the Chinese and the Russian vaccines have been approved. I think that they are also processing of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well. I think that's under process. I'll need to double check. I don't want to give an official position here, but there are specific vaccines that have been approved. And what Treasury does is to arrange payment. So what has happened so far is that we've received free vaccines from China through Sinopharm And as I say, I was vaccinated today. That's the jab that I got before our session started. And then the additional donation, we initially got 200,000 doses. There's an additional 200,000 coming through. And then after that, then we start buying. So we'll be buying vaccines from Sinopharm as well as Sinovac. And then also we are going to be buying the Johnson & Johnson vaccines via the AU facility. And I know that through COVAX, I think the Minister of Health has also indicated that, first of all, we've signed up, we've joined the platform, but also they've been very specific about which vaccines Zimbabweans would like to have. So we're very serious about the vaccine. And Treasury, I've set aside $100 million just to purchase the various vaccines. We're determined to get to that 60% herd immunity figure within the next 18 months, or if not 1 year. But we have set the resources aside, and thanks to some of the savings from last year from the fiscus, we have about 50% of those resources literally being a rollover from the fiscus directly from last year. We made those kind of savings from a prudent fiscal management. So we are pushing ahead with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. And just on that to note, the UK is really proud that we were able to provide cash transfers to the urban poor during lockdown to try and provide a bit of a safety net. I know you made an effort as the ministry as well on that. And very proud to be there.
That is an important point, Ambassador. You see, in my answer, I didn't go into the other measures we're doing to support the vulnerable. I had to deal more directly with the perception.
But I would flag it for you.
Yeah, that is a very important issue. And for the first time in the history of Zimbabwe, which is 40 years, we did cash transfers as government in the urban area. And even for our development partners, as Melanie has mentioned, I must say Ambassador Robinson, the first name is when we have other conversations, this serious one. They too have also, they're doing, some of them are doing this for the first time. So targeting the urban areas, the rural areas, cash transfers, food and so forth is all new for us, and we've done very well, both as government and the development partners working together.
Thank you, Honourable. And just to note, we're also very proud as the UK to be the initiator and to provide over $700 million to COVAX, so it can provide free vaccines to up to 20% of the people in the 92 poorest countries in the world. And please, Zimbabwe will be benefiting. It's going to benefit a little bit later than some of your neighbours because of your choice not to go with AstraZeneca, which is the available vaccine at the moment, but we are working on that. So we're pleased for that. But if I could just ask a quick follow-up on this one. I think transparency and accountability around the purchase of vaccines and making sure they're getting to the people that they should be in priority order is going to be incredibly important for the credibility of all governments all over the world. And I note that the Zimbabwean government, of course, had a scandal earlier in the year related to health procurement corruption. So what are you going to be able to do to demonstrate to citizens of Zimbabwe and the private sector here that when you're making those procurements, you're making them at the right market rate? Are you going to be able to publish those procurements? And then are you going to demonstrate, you're going to publish your vaccine delivery plan and demonstrate that people are really getting the vaccine in the order that they should? Thank you.
If you look at sources of corruption around procurement of PPE generally around the world, and it's not just Zimbabwe, a few other countries also have issues, frankly, around PPE procurement. A few millionaires have been created in the process. It is that we're allowing PPE to be procured by private companies on behalf of government. So we have changed that. With the vaccine, government is a direct procurer. Government is a direct procurer. There is no middleman, it's mainly men, by the way. I think let's stick to men who do these things. So it is no a middleman or middlewoman in this case. So if you look at Sinopharm and vaccine, Sinovac, Johnson & Johnson, it is government that we're buying directly and negotiating directly. And we are happy to publish the pricing around that, including the resources that have been spent. In any case, we're using budgetary resources. We have an obligation to publish. We have an obligation to tell Parliament. It is as simple as that. But also we've said that we would like these vaccines to be free to all citizens. So we are incurring this budgetary expense because as a country we've taken the view that is the best present we can give to Zimbabweans under these circumstances is a free vaccine. At least the upside with the vaccine, in fact, with all of them, is that they're actually cheaper than PPE. If you think about it, just the cost of a PCR test in Zimbabwe is about $65 US. The most expensive vaccine around the world is going for about $30 US, the most expensive. Under the COVAX facility, and thanks to the UK for contributing, the COVAX vaccines are going for around, somewhere between $3 and $6.50 from the prices that I saw. But in the main, we're getting this for free. They've been subsidized. So clearly, the vaccine route is far cheaper than the PPE route. So we should be able to really publish that information, the pricing. After all, we're using public resources. And then in terms of the rollout plan, the Minister of Health has published a rollout plan in terms of the prioritization, I think 3 stages, focusing initially on the frontline workers, mainly in the health sector, in other security areas, and then those who are vulnerable in terms of underlying conditions, and then those who are elderly, and then finally those who are very healthy and young. So I think there's a clear plan which is very similar to what other countries have done, including our neighbors in South Africa. It's very, very similar indeed. But then there is the issue of the reluctance to take on the vaccine. We are quite aware that this is voluntary. It's not compulsory at all. Even if frontline work is voluntary. So we hope that the more people take it and the more they do not show side effects and so forth, everyone then begins to be comfortable that they'll take on the vaccine. And it's a progressive process.
Thank you. And the participants in this webinar may well have a question about how the private sector can make sure that they're able to access vaccines for their workers. But let me leave it to the private sector to put that in the chat if that is on the tip of their tongues, and turn to Cecilia for a question direct from the participants today. Cecilia.
Thanks, Ambassador Robinson. No such questions as yet, but I do hope we'll be hearing that from private sector very soon. There is something else staying on monetary policy, which you've already addressed to some extent, but of course it is very much front of mind for most people. We do have a question from Benedict Mbanga. Piti, I think I really want to hear your thoughts on this. What are the current plans with regards to de-dollarization? Should government not be promoting the use of Zim dollars by scrapping taxes, etc., in US dollars to stem re-dollarization? Question to you.
You know what, as policymakers, we are right now not too concerned about dollarization or de-dollarization. We have taken a very pragmatic view, and in a way, it's COVID that has driven us. That we do realize that, like any economy, we face an existential crisis. So we have to be pragmatic. That's why we immediately allowed for the use of the US dollar for transaction purposes, after having disallowed it. But even during the time when we disallowed the US dollar, we allowed the US dollar to be used as a savings currency. So you could save in US dollars, but you couldn't buy in the shops in Zimbabwe in US dollars. So you could tell even then we're still going through that transition. But now you can save in US dollars and also transact in US dollars. And in fact, what we have seen is something very positive, which if you look at savings in US dollars, they've actually increased. We now have about 1.2 billion US dollars sitting in the banks in the form of savings in US dollars. But also you've seen increased use of the domestic currency in terms of domestic purchases, but also the US dollars is being used. So our view is that we're in a kind of pragmatic equilibrium that at this stage we have no wish to disturb, because we're still going through this reform transition, and COVID has made it not so easy for us. So we are not even, if you notice in my last few months, I've stayed away from the language of de-dollarization. It's just not very helpful language. We just need to be pragmatic. We just need to be pragmatic. And the pragmatism is paid off, during this pandemic period.
Thank you, Honourable. Cecilia, I think you've got a few more questions. I'll come back to you.
A couple more. I think just last one relating to COVID. And as you said, this feels like it's an immediate life-threatening factor here. However, other life-threatening factors have also not ceased to go away, even we've given them much less attention. And I think this is what James Hopper is referring to. He's saying, due to COVID and the fluctuations in currency, a number of important security projects with the ZRP were delayed in 2020. Will they be given priority in early 2021 to help improve domestic security and the rule of law?
One issue that has really impacted law enforcement in Zimbabwe is just mobility. Yeah, that the police don't have enough vehicles to move around. It's true that last year we had to delay the vehicle acquisition program, but this year we accelerate that. We have said that we want to purchase about between 400 to 500 cars for the police to be able to move around. Our police are walking; they can't respond to crime scenes easily, and other equipment that they need for law enforcement. So the answer is yes. We'll do more this year for our police force. And the one issue is really the issue of vehicles. Just being unable to move around easily is a major constraint, but we're determined to deal with that. Last year, we were able to buy already 1/5 of 20% of the target, which is almost 100 cars. This year, we hope to finish that project and make sure that our police are mobile.
Thank you. Cecilia, more from you.
Yes, I think I've had 3 questions that all relate to, I think, talent and skills in different ways. So the one question related to how does the government see the importance of attracting foreign skills, developing skills, and also skills transfer, and will the Immigration Act support this? And then we've also just had a question, anonymous attendee, asking if the government has plans to support professionalization of government employees.
Thank you very much. Attracting foreign skills, will the Immigration Act support this? And then how do you professionalize the civil servants, the government manpower? Then on foreign skills, we don't have a program really for attracting foreign skills deliberately, because also I think for a standard African country, Zimbabwe is reasonably endowed with skills because of the nature of the education sector. Not all the skills, frankly, I don't want to say that, but reasonably endowed with skills. So we don't have a foreign skills acquisition program. On the contrary, we've been exporting skills. Then here's my earlier comment to Ambassador Robinson that we need to do a deal where some of the Zimbabweans, all Zimbabweans in the UK, we should have a way of, formalizing the flow of remittances, and that was a bit tongue in cheek, but it's also workable in that way. So we don't have that. But should anyone seek to use their skills in Zimbabwe, they can apply for a work permit, having obviously been promised a job somewhere, and we have the Immigration Act to support that. But the company would have to show that there's no one with those skills in the sector, which is kind of normal for any application for using one skills in any country. You have to show that the company has to prove that there's no one else that they could find or something like that. So the environment is enabling enough within the confines of the standard immigration rules that apply everywhere. But we don't have a formal systematic foreign skills acquisition program. Then coming to professionalization of civil servants, oh yes, I think that one of the things that maybe I need to restart is a program that I tried to initiate when I was still a professor of public policy at Oxford University at Blavatnik. But then I left, went to the private sector, and now here am I back in government. So which is really a program for training senior civil servants There's more to do there, especially in the leadership area, strategic thinking at that senior level. Just further training is needed. Absolutely, you can never train people enough there. Then, in terms of middle management and lower levels, yes, indeed, there's always need to continue to train our staff. But in terms of technical skills, most ministries across government departments, they do send their staff for training, different colleges, abroad, for conferences, but we can never do enough of this. We just need to do more. I think the issue in most governments, including ours, is really one of over-bureaucratization. That sometimes it's not about the quality of the people, but it's about the rules we've put in place to execute a specific task, which often leave most of the clients that they're handling unhappy with the speed, with this and that. And frankly, we have to admit there are certain areas where there is some corruption. And that has nothing to do with the skills of the person, but it's got to do with their rent-seeking behavior for whatever reason. But those are things that we should stamp out. But I certainly concur that there's always need for continuous professionalization, continuous training. We can't do enough of this, frankly, and we have to look at different ways to do this.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to take the opportunity to sneak in a quick question from me, and then we'll come back to Cecilia for what might be the last one or two questions. You talked about later in the year looking again at having an IMF staff monitored program, which will allow you to really demonstrate that you're driving forward your economic reform program, and in time could lead to arrears clearance, debt relief, and more international finance. So a really important bit of progress if you can get there. Can you say something about why you think Zimbabwe wasn't able to stay on its staff monitored program last year? And then what you would want to see as preconditions to wanting to have another go at that for yourselves?
Well, there are a few reasons why we couldn't stay on track. Although I thought that we could also have managed it differently, both parties could have managed that scenario differently. We couldn't stay on track just on simple growth targets. We were expecting about plus 3% rate of growth in terms of targets. But then we had to change that very quickly because of the climate shock. So the climate shock took us off course. That was a major shock, which is not to be underestimated. And then we ended up with a negative rate of growth from the drought as well as the cyclone. And then in the middle of all that, we're still grappling with dealing with our issues around monetary targeting and monetary policy, the currency reform areas, and also bedding down our quasi-fiscal activities and so forth. We're still managing our way through that, and we're in the middle of an S&P, so we could not meet some of the target on the monetary targeting front. So then the S&P was off course. But then let's not also underestimate then the advent of COVID in all of that. We really went through, I think, some unfortunate situations. Then with COVID now, the IMF team had agreed to come back to recalibrate. Say, okay, this is where we are. Let's recalibrate and let's fine tune this fund. And we're beginning to have a conversation about what to recalibrate. We also had committed to how we would meet some of the targets on the monetary front, and that recalibration mission couldn't happen. And then while we're going through all of that, the mission team gets changed. The mission leader took another assignment elsewhere. So that really became the fate of the S&P. And yet, because of the S&P targets came from the government's own TSP in the first place, the Transitional Stabilization Program, which I launched on the 4th of October in 2018, where I remained on that path. We remained on that path. And this is what delivered the fiscal results that you see. And this is what has delivered eventually the currency stability that you see. It is what has delivered the falling inflation that you see and the successful monetary targeting that you see. So eventually we got there by behaving as if we were still on the S&P. So we stayed the course. So I don't think we lost a time there in terms of meeting some of the really critical objectives of a typical of an S&P that we started negotiating. Why do I think they need to be successful in future? I think it will be successful. We have demonstrated that we can walk the talk, even without anyone monitoring. We can succeed, and not to please anyone, but to do the right thing for ourselves as the government, but also for the citizens of Zimbabwe. Just do the right thing. We think we can do that. But also, to be honest, it also depends on whether the IMF would welcome our suggestion of requesting an S&P in the first place, because it takes two to tango. We can request, they can say yes, they can say no. It's as simple as that. But I'm determined that beyond the TSP, with the National Development Strategy, we are sticking to that. Absolutely, certainly during my tenure, we will not deviate. There's no intention to deviate from the ideals of the targets of the National Development Strategy. And for those of you who have not seen it, at the back of the document, I'm happy to share, we have a macroeconomic framework that will follow religiously. And that's really that's what will drive our adherence to those targets. Something that I will do as well, I'm going to launch at the end of this month a financial governance and smart regulation forum. It's very, very important. And this is something that we've discussed at length with the World Bank and also with the IMF. And it's a good thing because the financial sector is quite wide. We need some smart regulation so there are no gray areas that smart agents take advantage of, so forth. But also in terms of just financial governance of government resources is also governed properly. So we introduce that as part of the measures that will overlay on our macro framework under the National Development Strategy 1. So yeah, that's my but welcome. I'm looking forward to the Article 4 visit by the IMF May, first week of May, and then we take it from there. That will be the initial visit, but of course we expect then in the third quarter to really have a full Article 4 analysis. But also it's important, I think, that they must do that for when we are clearer on the impact of the pandemic under a vaccination program. Also when it's clearer where the economy is going. We don't want the effect of the pandemic just to cloud all the numbers. And all we're reporting is the pandemic effect. Let's try to analyze the effect of other policies. And I think that the timing we've chosen, May initially, then in the third quarter for a full Article 4 is really the way to do it. Then S&Ps for next year, and we'll have those discussions openly with the IMF. I mean, we have the spring meeting coming, so I'm going to have conversations with both the World Bank. I've got meetings lined up with the head for Africa, Baby Selassie, as well as VP for the World Bank for Africa. Hafez, thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable. Now I see Leon was coming on, which means I'm going to try and sneak one last question from Cecilia, but this really will be the last one. I'll say a few words and then we'll pass to Leon to finish up. So Cecilia, final question from you.
Final question from me, which is actually also for the UK government side to just comment on. I've had a question around the UK support for the Zimbabwean economic recovery, and I actually think this kind of stretch into South Africa as well. It's not just the UK government, but also businesses' support for the economic recovery. I think the two go hand in hand. One can't do it without the other.
The UK support has been multifaceted, and I think Ambassador Robinson can even elaborate here. Multifaceted in the sense that there is this support for the ordinary citizens of Zimbabwe. The cash transfers that she was referring to earlier, that's one way you really keep people out of extreme poverty. And that's important. It's very, very important. It means that they've higher levels of spending power, and that keeps the economy going and vulnerable out of extreme poverty. And then secondly is the support that we've seen through the vaccine. It's not to be underestimated. The fact that the UK has made this financial donation make sure the vaccines are available to Zimbabweans under the COVAX facility, as they've done for the rest of Africa, is very, very important. And third, the support that the UK gives to its own businesses, those that want to invest abroad, including Zimbabwe, is also a support for Zimbabwe's recovery. But also, you know, the UK is an old partner of Zimbabwe, so any support in terms of advocacy and there and so forth. Of course, sometimes there are differences politically, but I'll leave that for others. I'll leave it to Melanie and my other friends in government. It's multifaceted, frankly, in terms of support. But let's do more. I think the earlier discussion that is much more granular about that we have got specific product in the agricultural sector. How can Zimbabwe get those into the UK? That's support for Zimbabwe business. But it's a tango as well. How can Zimbabwe also open up to UK businesses wanting to invest in Zimbabwe, wanting to sell in Zimbabwe? Let's have a focused program on that in order to implement our bilateral agreement. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister. Well, you've laid out a lot of what the UK's done, and just to point out that globally, you know, COVID came at a time when the UK was taking up this year the G7 presidency, and last year we put a lot of effort not only to tackling COVID in the UK, obviously, but making sure that COVAX was set up, that we had a way of supporting vaccines globally, and that in all of our programs, our aid programs, we were able to pivot them towards supporting countries on COVID. So we really quickly reprogrammed about £24 million last year to enable us to do that here in Zimbabwe, and the ministers talked about some of the things we did. But also under our G7 presidency, we will be working on how we help the world build back better, build back greener. Last year we did a lot through the World Bank and the IMF to make sure that developing countries had the level of liquidity that they needed. Of course, they had far less to kind of inject into their economies than we had in the rich world, but we made that space available and kind of paused some debt repayments and so on to give that space. And this year we'll be looking at doing more. Of course, I personally wish Zimbabwe was in a position to access World Bank financing. There is a pathway for that involves the economic and political reforms. The Minister's spoken about some of the economic reforms, you know, the UK would love to see Zimbabwe firmly back on track and getting on that pathway to reform so it can be in good standing with the international system and get some of the kind of support other countries, including South Africa, are getting. And finally, yes, to underline the work with the private sector, you know, we continue to want to work with you in the private sector to understand, you know, what are the barriers to your investment? What are the barriers to you doing better, being more profitable, investing more, exporting more, and to enabling you to do that, because that's good for the UK and it's good for Zimbabwe. So perhaps I will leave it there for comments. And I think before I hand back to Leon, firstly, to say thank you very much, Cecilia, for managing those comments. Thank you very much to all the participants who've taken time to join us today. I look forward to meeting you all in person once the vaccines are well and truly rolled out, Minister. But I want to finish by saying a huge thank you to you, Honourable Minister, for giving up your time to be with us today. I think you've really answered the questions fully and openly, and that has been really fantastic for me and I think all the other participants. I was really encouraged by what you said about your desire to sustain that macro and currency stability, maybe even get to the point where you can give up surrender into the future, which would help British businesses. Really encouraged by what you say about working to improve the environment for doing business and attracting FDI and enabling export here in Zimbabwe. And what I'd like to do is suggest that we maintain this kind of conversation with British business going forward. I'd like to pick up on what you said about working on renewable energy and propose that I bring some of the leading UK independent power providers to you to see how we can drive forward your desire to do more in that area. I would like to suggest we do a broader event like this later in the year and come back and pick up on some of the things that you talked about once we've seen more of the year work through. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed. And to say congratulations to BritCham on this launch of the chapter here in Zimbabwe. I think it's going to be a very fruitful partnership and a fantastic way to take forward the interests of British business. And with that, let me just ask the Minister if you'd like to say a few words to finish, and then finally to Leon to wrap up. But firstly, Honourable, anything you'd like to say by way of finishing?
Yes, really to thank you, Ambassador Robinson, for arranging this webinar. to thank Leon Ayo for the British Chamber's participation and Cecilia for the filled in the questions. It's been fantastic to interacting with you and answering the questions. Indeed, let's do this again in the fourth quarter of the year. Let's see where we are, and let's do it twice every year. You know, I think that let's just keep this going. We need the investment as Zimbabwe. We also wish our companies to export to the UK. All I can say that Zimbabwe is open for business. We'll keep improving the environment for doing business so that, you know, as investors, we are comfortable, and we'll stay the course in terms of our reform agenda and in generating the stability that we've already created in the last 6 to 8 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable. And now I pass the floor back to Leon, who I think will close up the session for us today. Thank you very much, Honourable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Honourable Minister. I will echo the Ambassador's words in terms of thanking you and your staff for creating the time and giving us such an engaging, lively, and candid responses, which triggered some great questions and great interest. Part of our role here at the British Chambers in Southern Africa is obviously helping our members grow, but we speak regularly to people looking to launch their businesses in Africa. We speak to investors, impact investors, entrepreneurs, and multinationals looking to expand. And just yesterday, a friend of mine in London who is representing a large client is saying, Leon, we need your agnostic views of where to invest in the continent. And what is great to hear is that you are open for business. And I think that's a message that we want to really understand more. Just last night I was talking with Tom about a series of investors and businesses that want to come on a trade mission to Zimbabwe next month. And we really hope in this partnership with the British Chamber, with Zimbabwean Business Group, we can really start accelerating that investment agenda and encouraging business growth. And as the Ambassador says, we really, in this unique post-COVID VUCA environment, it is an opportunity to build back better and build back greener. Some of the key things that you've raised will really speak to our membership, really around that mobility of talent. I know myself as an Englishman who's lived in Africa for the last 8 years with my own African roots, I've come across Zimbabwean talent all around the world. Nurses in London, I served with Zimbabweans of all backgrounds within the British Army. And here in Johannesburg, where I live, we can see Zimbabweans at the helm of many leading businesses. And I think something you said around the remittances and the invisible exports of your skilled staff is really an opportunity. With the African Continental Free Trade Agreement coming into play, it's going to be really interesting to see how we can embrace that mobility of talent. I know you and the Ambassador both spent time at Oxford University. I myself am an old visiting lecturer at Said Business School, and what strikes me the difference is often the international nature of the student cohort and the professoriate body, whereas often here in Southern Africa, we don't perhaps have that global diversity. And I think it's important to give our young Africans exposure to that global diversity. And I think Zimbabwe perhaps leads the way in terms of exporting talent from that perspective, but we need to make sure it stays connected to our region. So many themes to pick up, and in the short period of time we've had, I think it's been a hugely dynamic conversation, and I am really enthused by the energy and indeed the audience that we've had this morning, and very much look forward to taking this forward and building this momentum and building this partnership going forward. Honourable, I just want to thank you and your staff again. Thank you so much for giving us the time, the candor, and the insights. Ambassador Robinson, thank you to your team and your staff for giving us the opportunity to partner with you in this new partnership, and to thank Tom Hill and Kate Chambers behind the scenes for really pulling this together. Tom and I have been talking about this for over a year now, so really pleased we managed to pull it together, and we couldn't have done it without your support. To my team, Cecilia, who expertly fielded the questions, but to EMA Mission Control, to Leslie and Venice, the operational backbone, to make sure we're in the right place at the right time with the right link with all the technology working, something we've had to learn very quickly. And I hope that you will meet us all in person in the very near future when we can come and visit you and deliver these in-person events and equally receive you in different African countries. Again, just to underline what our core mission is, we are here to celebrate British trade. We've got a shared link, shared history, and we want to continue supporting your country and indeed this region in terms of growth through doing business for good. Thank you most to our members for joining. We look forward to engaging with you going forward. And please, we're going to reach out to you to say how we can serve you best as members of this chamber. So please, we're going to write to you, we already have, but feel free to reach back and connect with us with any specific request you have. Thank you everybody for a really inspirational and energetic morning, and I look forward to being in touch with you in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to our next session.
Looking forward to it. All the best, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.